Hey you guys, welcome to the Dr. G Show. Today is Tuesday at 7, so this is our time to nerd out and have some fun, make some jokes and learn some stuff. As you guys join in, definitely feel free to like the video and to share the video with people you think will help. Today we're going to talk about thyroid part 2. So last week we talked about kind of how the thyroid worked, kind of from head to toe, from beginning to end, what that looks like. And we had lots of questions about autoimmune thyroid, but we didn't get time for that. Hey, there's Marcia. Helly. So, and there's Tim. That's good to have you guys on. So we didn't get a lot of time to talk about autoimmune thyroid. So what we want to do this week is actually talk about how that works, and we'll decomplicate this, right? Because it's really just molecular mimicry secondary with T-cell dysregulation. So what the hell does that mean? We're going to draw it all out. So I'm going to do something different. We're going to do a little experiment today. We're going to talk a little bit, but then I'm going to turn the camera down to my desk and as if you were on the other side. Now, the advantage of this is you get to kind of see what I present to someone else maybe, right? But I won't be able to see questions till the very end, so we'll answer questions towards the end. I'll try to make sure to save a lot of time for that. And then we'll kind of wrap things up, and we got to figure out a topic for next week. So if you guys have good ideas for that, let me know. Let's see, what else? Oh, a couple other really kind of house cleaning things. Yes. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Deb Anderson said up-down writing time. That's exactly what's going to happen today. And I had to mess with the camera because I write upside down and backwards so the patient, so it's right for the patient on the other side of the desk. And so I was trying to get it to where the camera would do that, and I couldn't do it. So I have to actually switch the camera around, and then it works. So hopefully it'll work. All right. So, a couple house cleaning things here. On Saturdays, there's the mindful group that meets at the Common Grounds. It's a great place to really be transparent, learn some mindful things. Scott Spradlin's the one that puts that on. He's an awesome guy. I've learned so much there, and it has transitioned my life. And, a lot of times when people say, well, what do I do for my thyroid? Well, stop being stressed all the time. Stop exhausting yourself. Well, how do I do that? Mindful. Yoga, meditation, changing the way that you think and perceive, reading books like Happiness and those kind of books that give you these ideas that change your mind. So that's really how you fix your thyroid in the end. And then, so that's every Saturday at 10 to like 12, something like that. And then there's we do mindful, kind of mindful discussions, and then we kind of play around, have some fun, and get serious. And then we do 2 20-minute meditations, which seems like a long time, but really, once you've done it for a while, it just goes super fast. So, and then vegan night. So we used to have these luncheons or dinners for patients, and so very few of you guys have these right tribes of talking the same language about food to other people. And so when we'd have vegan night, it was awesome because all these people that nobody knows. They don't know each other, but suddenly they can talk about quinoa, and they can talk about gluten-free, and they can talk about dairy-free, and they can talk about this, and everybody's on the same page. So it's pretty amazing. But luckily, they have a vegan night every second Monday of the month. So this week, or this time, it's on the 14th. So on the 14th, you just got to bring a potluck, like a gluten-free, dairy-free, try to. At least you don't have to be gluten-free for them, but try to do gluten-free, dairy-free, and animal product-free, because they are vegans. You don't have to be vegan. Just cook like a vegan, and then add some meat if you want later. So nobody's going to shame you if you're not a vegan. So that's okay. Or if you're just a vegetarian. Just a vegetarian. Nobody cares. So just go so you can hang out with some right tribe food people, get some good ideas, and if you want to add meat at home, add meat. Also, when you bring your food, write down the ingredients, so it's very allergy sensitive there too, which I know a lot of my patients would love so that way they don't like accidentally eat something they can't. So that's really awesome. That's at the First Universalist Unitarian Church, I believe, maybe on 21st Street. It's on my Facebook feed. So just scroll down like 10 things, and I think it's there. I posted that. So that'll be this coming Monday. That'll be great. We can sit around and just eat, be happy. I don't have to put it on. Everybody does work for me. So that's even the best thing. So, anything else? Mindful Monday. Connie Paraska in the In Mind group. They were putting on this, and I'm so sorry, I forgot her name. Yikes. And she's a detective, so I'm probably getting arrested for this. But I went to the Mindful, Mini Mindful thing on Mondays. So I think it's the first Monday of each month down in Delano next to Picasso's Pizza. There's a wonderful little studio where they do, I think, marketing, and she's gracious enough to, I should probably know these people's names, but I just learned it. So the other day I walked all the way down to Delano from where I am at my office in Old Town, and then to get some tea, walked back. Then I realized, oh shoot, it's Mindful Monday. I gotta walk back, so I walked all the way back to Delano District, and then attended the mindful meditation thing. That was wonderful. It was a little bit of yoga, chair yoga, very simple. Anybody could do it. I was the only guy. Where's all the mindful guys at? Can't just be me and Scott. So we need more guys there. So that's every month also. So, and then there's meditation at the Domes on Thursday with Connie Paraska leading that too. So lots of great things for when we talk about thyroid. What do I do? Where do I go? There's a lot of events locally, whether it's yoga, meditation, mindfulness, that you can start becoming a part of. So you don't have to figure this stuff out. Just sit there and be led by people that know what the hell they're doing. That's what I do. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. All right, so now what are we going to do? Let's talk about thyroid, and let's talk about autoimmune thyroid. So with autoimmune thyroid, your immune system is misidentifying your own tissue. So all autoimmune, whether it's thyroid or lupus or Sjogren's or MS, it's all the same thing. So yeah, there's Diane Waltner. She knows what's up. She posted on here about the vegan night too. So it doesn't matter what the autoimmune is. That's the end product. So pretty much all autoimmune is basically the same thing. And so it's the in-tissue molecular mimic that ends up being named for the disease. So if it's the myelin sheaths of the nerves, we call it MS. If it's the beta cells in the pancreas, in the eyelids and Langerhans, then we call it type 1 diabetes. If it's connective tissue in the face, we'll call it lupus. If it's connective tissue like the annular fibers that go around your knuckles, then we'll call it, what do we call it? I keep wanting to say Raynaud's. It's not Raynaud's. Rheumatoid arthritis. There you go. So that second molecular mimic is why we name that autoimmune for what it is. But the reality is it's all the same thing. So if we can explain very concisely and understandably, which we will, I'll draw it all out, then we can understand why we have autoimmune, what we can do about it, and how to normalize physiology. So we have this pathophysiology that's going on that's expected outcome. It's not abnormal. This is the expected outcome for what we do to ourselves. So then if we stop doing those things to ourselves, we should be able to normalize that pathophysiology and restore normal physiology. So we'll call it restorative physiology. All right, so this is what we do all the time. So I have patients all around the country, all around the world. We had a couple different countries represented last week. So, and a couple people drove in from other states. So, it's amazing how simple this really is, but it's profound. So there's a lot of complexity to this, but I will try to simplify as much as possible. And just remember, as I turn the camera and I start drawing all this stuff for you, I can't see your questions. So post them. I'll answer afterwards. All right, so we'll try to catch up at the very end. So, all right, so let me position the camera, and you guys will now be the patient, and we'll try to get this figured out. All right, just a second. Uh-oh. This way? All right, you are now the person sitting across from me, and here is our paper. Okay, so for those that know me, or have seen this, we're gonna do a magic trick too. We're gonna write backwards and upside downs for you. Okay, so what we want to do is say, how can we address autoimmune by addressing why we have autoimmune? So with something like this, and I'll try to post some of these things too, so you have the clearer view. With this, if you look at all these different conditions, so these are symptomatic. These are what are called primary molecular mimic reactions. Now, I'll throw in the secondary molecular mimics, which is the autoimmune as we go through this. But if you understand why this is, you can treat 20 different patients and reverse their pathophysiology by doing the same thing, which is, to me, simplicity. So we have histamines. You guys probably have heard of histamines before. Histamines are those inflammatory molecules that basically give you like allergies, if you will, or when you're sick, you're all warm and you're flush. But there's different types. So you can see H1, H2, H3, H4, all the way to like H9, H8, H8, H9, right? And they all go and they affect tissues in different ways. So they can affect estrogen regulation, they can affect mucus, they can affect vasodilation. So if this histamine is producing this very specific H1, H2, H3, H4, it will then create these physiological responses to these systems and cause these chronic symptoms. So we can have someone with vertigo and headaches and migraines, nausea, vomiting, irregular sleep cycles, learning disorders like dyslexia or ADHD, those kind of things, body temperature, like, like hot all the time, cold all the time, immune problems, diarrhea, irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, stomach cramps, gastroparesis, irregular menstrual cycles, PMS, asthma, allergies, bronchitis, sinus problems, which is a ton of people, congestion, chronic congestion, rashes, itching, flushing, arrhythmias, low blood pressure, high blood pressure, all those. And so if you know how this works, then you can have all those different people come in, and then you say, why do they have chronic histamine overproduction? That's the real solution that we want, is why is this overproducing and overstimulating and causing this chronic reaction? Because as we say in lifestyle medicine, if you have a chronic condition, it's something you're chronically doing. But most people don't know what that chronic thing is. So that's what we're going to help with. So let's talk about how you end up with this. So we said that all autoimmune is T cell dysregulation. And you have these T cells, and in your body, the T comes from your thymus, not from China, like the green tea does, but this T is for thymus, which is just under your breastplate. It's really big when you're a baby, and then it gets smaller. But your T cells are like neighborhood watch. So they have these little antennas on there, I guess, if you will. And their only job is to decide, do you belong here or do you not belong here? So it should be able to look at cancer cells and go, hey, you don't belong here. I'm going to go tell. Or look at your own tissue and say, I don't attack my own tissue. You're supposed to be here. So it should fight cancer, and it should prevent autoimmune. It should find bacteria and viruses and solve those problems. And it does this by reading things called antigens. And we're going to make up this little symbolic antigen, which is like a little antenna that correctly identifies this thing uniquely. So all living things have these antigens, and they're very complex, like your social security number, that correctly identifies only you. So over the millennia of evolution of moms to children, mom has always passed down her blood into the child, which includes this database of immune or say antigen markers. So the classic example for this is Klebsiella pneumonia. Now, it's a crazy word, but Klebsiella pneumonia is like walking pneumonia. People get it all the time. Somebody coughs on you. You don't get sick because you're pretty healthy, right? So we all get exposed to this on, every now and then, but we don't get sick from this. But when that T cell sees this Klebsiella pneumonia floating around, it reads this antigen, and then it takes a little bit of time looking up through the database and then responding to it. So the first reaction is going to take a little time, right? Has to look at the antigen sequence and figure out what that thing is. So when it figures out, hey, you're a bacteria, you're not supposed to be here. Well, we said it's neighborhood watch, right? So it's got a flashlight and a whistle. It can't do crap, right? Shine the light on it real bright. That ain't gonna work. So it has to go tell, because it's a tattletale. That's what neighborhood watch is, a bunch of tattletales. Oh, somebody's breaking in Johnny's house. Tattletale, right? What does Cindy say? I can't remember. Was it when we tattletale, we're telling ourselves that we're a tattler? I don't know, something like that. It's from the Brady Bunch. If somebody knows that one, they gotta post it. It may have been from the spoof one that they remade in the 90s. I don't know. But we have T cell. Okay, so T cells go and tell somebody. So they go and tell B cells. And B cells are these immune systems that come from the bone. That's where the B comes from. And these are like cops, right? So neighborhood watch sees this bacteria floating around. It goes and tells cops. Cops start shooting antibodies, which look like these little double Ys. And they are specifically coded to only bind to that specific antigen. So it's kind of like Bob robs the liquor store and the cops only shoot bullets that hit Bob. And then once that's coded, that bacteria can't do anything for you. We have this immune cell called a macrophage, and that means a big eater cell. So nobody's going to pay any doctor to talk about the big eater cells. So we'll call it a macrophage in Latin. And that eats up this thing, and then the bacteria is gone. But some of these antibodies will go trigger a cell called a mast cell. And a mast cell will start dumping out histamines. So for most of you guys, through this whole conversation, this is probably the only thing that makes any sense at this point, is histamines. But like we said, is it H1, is it H2, is it H3, H4, and so on. And those go and cause specific reactions. Which in this case, when you look at an infection, that's great. It's supposed to dilate the blood vessels, so these really tight blood vessels start becoming fenestrated. Immune cells can go out of the blood into tissue and fight infection. And we win. So this is how it works perfect. And then we make a T memory cell, and this is the key part here. And we make a B memory cell. So the whole purpose of making memory cells is so we don't we don't have to examine or look up the database of the antigen again. So the next time somebody gets coughed on and there's Klebsiella pneumonia, T cell doesn't have to run the antigen, take a long time. It has a faster reaction. T memory cells and B memory cells are now like wanted posters. It doesn't have to run it. It goes, there's the guy. That's Bob, right? So the more we get coughed on, the faster we react, and eventually we become pretty immune to anything, which is great. People that work in sick areas often have some of the strongest immune systems because of that. So this is how it works, but like I always say, we're Americans, so we're going to mess it up. So the first thing that we do to suppress T cells, because what we're talking about is T cell dysregulation, we're going to eat a bunch of sugar. So we said the average American consumes about 150 pounds of added sugar to their diet each year. We went from 0, right? When Robinson Crusoe came out in the 1700s, Crusoe was talking about the sweet foods of his homeland. He was talking about peas and carrots. No American would think peas and carrots is sweet, but that's what food was. Food used to be sweet. Now the average American can have up to half a teaspoon of added sugar to water before they would even notice there's sugar in the water. So we consume this in 50 different names. So if you look at a bag of Cheetos, which you shouldn't, but it'll have sugar on there once, but 7 other names that convert to sugar readily. So we're eating 7 times the sugar that's in there as far as the names. It's mostly all just a bunch of sugar. So we eat 150 pounds of added sugar to our diet. But it only takes 1 teaspoon of sugar to suppress T cells for about 30 minutes. So for 30 minutes, you took off this dude's glasses and you got Neighborhood Watch a little drunk. So now Neighborhood Watch doesn't have their glasses, they've been drinking a little, they're getting their usher on in the parking lot, right, doing a little dance, and then like, wait, who's breaking into Bob's or Tom's house? Is that Bob or is that Tom? Ah, crap, I'm not sure. And so it makes a mistake because the body is supposed to protect. That's the whole goal, is when in doubt, protect. So it will look at another antigen, maybe gliadin, which is the typical case for this one, and it might look at this and say, you know what, that looks a lot like that. I think it's the same thing. Kind of like looking for 2 different guys, and one's has long hair and a goatee and dark sunglasses and a yellow shirt, and the other one has the same thing, but hair's a little bit darker and has a blue shirt on. But I don't know, they're pretty close. Let's just attack them both. And once we do this, once T cells make this mistake, now when someone eats bread and it breaks down to gliadin, it thinks this is now Klebsiella pneumonia. And this is what's called primary molecular mimicry. Now that goes back to these symptoms. At that point, we are just these inflammatory, chronic symptoms, often several of these. So every time that person eats bread, they dump out these histamines. They dump out very specific histamines, and for some it might be a migraine, some it might be a rash, some it might be asthma, some it might be irritable bowel. But it's all based on this. And if we don't change, which we're Americans, we're not going to change anything, then we'll end up just repeating the same mistake. And now when we look at something like a very specific type of tissue, if its antigen looks very close to the original, then it might say, you know what, that looks like that, which looks like that, and we make secondary molecular mimic mistake, and now that cold is gone, that bacteria is gone, but the T memory cell and B memory cell now think gliadin is that bacteria. And every time that person eats bread, it breaks down into gliadin, and it causes the immune system to attack the tissue. And this pathway is specific for ankylosing spondylitis, like fusing of the spine, and also rheumatoid arthritis. Now, different food antigens are mimicked by different bacteria and viruses. So Epstein-Barr is a very big one for that. Mono is a very big one for that. Well, what's the other ones? I think it's parvovirus is one. There's a whole list of these that are very specific. Actually, I think I have a list over here. And yeah, mycobacteria, Epstein-Barr. Oh, Klebsiella pneumonia. We talked about that one. Oh, and Yersinia. Yersinia is a really good one. And herpes simplex virus, like cold sore virus. So there's a whole list of these that start out. And the way this works in nature is just like when we go to if we go to war, or if we go hunting, we're going to try to camouflage with what we see around us. So as bacteria and viruses change, they try to mimic what's around them, and that's why they end up looking very close to things like food. And I heard a long time ago that Americans only eat 16 different foods a year. Whatever we're eating, that's all we're eating. Which means if we're only eating a handful of things, and those handful of things cause this histamine reaction, then we should have chronic inflammatory problems. So, let's go back to this. And this is what that looks like too, here. So we have the microbe and we have a sequence, and you can see The infection becomes the food sensitivity, which becomes the autoimmune condition. Primary molecular mimicry, secondary molecular mimicry. Now, if you looked at these things by themselves, you'd totally think they're different. But if you're drunk and you don't have your glasses, they got some common things. They're probably the same. Just, it's all good, right? So that's the molecular mimicry, and this is probably not a very good one. This is from a lab study, but I had to blow it up. It's not very good, but we'll see. But here's your human sequencing, and then here is your soy. And you can see that soy shares this much of these sequences. Now, if you're sober, you're like, dude, these don't start with the same thing. Obviously, they're not the same thing. But if you're drunk, you're looking for commonalities. If you're suppressed, you're looking for commonalities. Same thing with a carrot. A carrot shares a lot of that antigen sequencing. The same with like spinach. Why would somebody be allergic to spinach, or why would that stimulate their autoimmune? Well, because they share similar antigens to specific tissue antigens. Same thing like with tomato. Again, it's very different based on what's going on with that patient. And this is another one where we look at the proteins like human lymphocytic antigen, Klebsiella pneumonia, Yersinia, acetylcholine receptors. So this would be for like myasthenia gravis. Herpes simplex 1, which is cold sores, mycobacterium, proteoglycan proteins. So again, this would be more of a tissue disorder. Epstein-Barr virus. And so you can see that they share common things among them. And all it takes is a little bit of suppression of that T cell to cause molecular mimicry. So, back to neighborhood watch. Making that mistake twice. Sugar does this. Well, the American diet, that's what we do. We eat lots of sugar. The other thing that's a big problem with this is stress. So, your liver has this process called gluconeogenesis, making sugar from scratch. So you can eat a candy bar or you can stress a candy bar, but the effect on the immune system is exactly the same. We end up suppressing T cells, and that's why stressed people get sick more often and why they end up getting cancer and dying more often. And America, as you know, is number one for anxiety and depression. So, we love our depression, we love our anxiety, we're Americans. When we think about other countries being happy and healthy, we're not going to learn from them. We're Americans. So we love fear. We love inadequacy. We thrive on the idea that we're never good enough and that everybody's out to hurt us. But that's not reality. That's a whole different discussion. So we choose this lifestyle of chronic stress based off of things like constant fear and constant inadequacy. That suppresses your immune system the same as sugar does. And the last thing is chemicals. And there's about 7 million chemicals that we have created from scratch, mostly from petroleum, that have not been tested on humans. But guess what? They're being tested on humans. Now I want to show you something. So we're going to go on a little travel trip here. Travel trip? Is that a real thing? Alright, so when we talk about chemicals, that's funny because I can't even see, so I don't even know if people are even on this. This is my biochemistry chart in my office. Is that big? There we go. Now we got it all. I love this chart. This is every biochemical process in the body. Got this from Roche Labs. But if we look at this, like here's our citric acid cycle to make energy. That's where we turn fatty acids into energy. And then, you know, at Natural Grocers, we're going to do a talk on the cholesterol myth and how it's killing people. And if we can find, here we go. Here is cholesterol. Cholesterol is not bad. You need cholesterol because it makes things like progesterone, which then makes you happy and healthy. But that gets exhausted as cortisol, which is stress, which is why we have the problem in the first place. It makes estrone, somewhere over there. There it is. And look, it makes something like chocolate. Is that chocolate? Oh, it almost looks like chocolate. Wouldn't that be awesome if it made chocolate? But here's your DHEA. Oh, there's your pregnenolone. There's your DHEA. That's your anti-aging hormone. But they all come from cholesterol somewhere. There he is, cholesterol. So, that's awesome, because this chart is how you make all these things work. And what's interesting is you can see different colors in here, and those different colors relate to different things like plants, animals, versus things like bugs. And there is nothing unique about human physiology that isn't shared with every other species. So, we can't kill bugs or kill weeds without harming ourselves in the process. So anything we do to sterilize fleas, we sterilize ourselves. Anything that we do to kill weeds in the yard, we destroy ourselves. So that's a really interesting thing, because, you know, we basically chemicalize our whole environment. So I love the example of gum now, because the colors are petroleum, the flavors from petroleum, the preservative is VHT, which is paint thinner, the 3 sugars, aspartame, neotame, and acetyltame, are all formaldehyde. There's a consequence we pay for that, and that consequence is autoimmune. And if you think about something like in 1980, we created Diet Coke. And 4 years later, in 1984, we had a sudden epidemic of all autoimmune disease. And we created 2 brand new diseases, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And that's why back when they first started, those autoimmune conditions were considered made up. They were in your head. They didn't exist, because we didn't have textbooks on those things. We have known disease for thousands of years. We have textbooks, you know, that predate Jesus, right? So all of a sudden we have this just astronomical bloom of these fibromyalgia and chronic fatigues, but we have no textbooks, no doctors trained in this, no hospitals, no specialists, no insurance codes, nothing, because we created these 2 new autoimmune diseases. But how did we create it? By taking petroleum and making formaldehyde and making fake sugar that converts back to formaldehyde at 87 degrees. So we drink formaldehyde and we end up messing up the immune system. Now, all other autoimmune diseases went right with that. So we can't ignore the idea that we cause these things, because if we address the fact that we cause them, then we can acknowledge that we can uncause them. We can try to restore normal physiology with these things. So the idea of like functional lifestyle medicine is saying what causes it, stop doing that, and make sure the body returns back to normal. It's not curing disease, it's stop causing disease. So, where does that leave us? Chemicals? Yeah. So, then what we do to figure out the intermediary molecular mimics, if we can identify these foods, then we can stop causing that reaction based on those memory cells. And we do that through a blood test called IgG delayed sensitivities, which you guys might have heard about. But you have these immunoglobulins, and you have immunoglobulin gamma. And gamma is the delayed one. It's a little slow. It's like your cousin at the family gathering. Doesn't quite get all the jokes. So if you have a reaction, say we have our symptomatic threshold and our critical threshold, an IgE reaction, immunoglobulin epsilon, if you ate peanut, boom, your throat swells up, you're going to die. So that's great. There's an EpiPen for that. A drug, which we raised the price dramatically so it's even more profitable. So this is the only one anybody really cares about outside of school, because it's the only one that has a medication. It's the only one that's life-threatening. But if we break this thing down into days, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, you could eat a peanut, and if you have an IgG delayed sensitivity, it might take 3 or 4 days before it even becomes a symptom. Now, whether that symptom is a migraine or irritable bowel or Crohn's or whatever it is, that's what it's going to be. But it's going to be very frustrating, because I ate a taco today, it must be the taco. Well, I ate a taco yesterday and it didn't cause a problem. Okay, so I'll go on. And then, again, the same thing happens, and I'm like, oh, I ate a donut. It must be no, it's not the donut, because I had a donut last week. So these delayed sensitivities mess things up because it takes a while for them to be a reaction. So they're really hard to figure out on even food logs. And so all the time patients are confused of like, maybe it's this, maybe it's not, I don't know. But that IgG is delayed. So that's what makes that really difficult. So to make it simple, they figured out a blood test. And what they do is they put your T cells and your B cells, your blood, in here. And then they put an antigen from a food in there. And then they wait several days to see what happens. If your immune cell looks at that, your T memory cell and your B memory cell, if it looks at that food antigen and it says, well, that's a banana. I don't attack bananas. That's bananas. That's not very funny. All right, then you get a big fat 0. But if your T cell or B cell looks at that banana antigen and it says, hey, I think you're a virus, and it has that molecular mimicry mistake, and it causes a small reaction, it'll give you a 1. A moderate will give you a 2. Severe reaction will give you a 3. Now, one of the things to consider is that just because you have these reactions that seem graded, it doesn't mean the symptoms are going to be the same. So the autoimmune or even the symptomatic responses, a 3 may do nothing and a 1 may cause everything. So the way I always describe this and how to approach this is, imagine you go get stabbed out in the parking lot 3 times. That's horrible. But what if you only got stabbed like 1 time? That's still horrible. All of these are horrible because they all mean molecular mimicry. They all mean chronic symptoms or autoimmune disease. So you want to eliminate all of these. And we do that, at least for ours, we do 184 different foods. So we don't waste them on stupid chemicals and things that don't eat these toxic things anyways. But that's what we do. And this looks like this. I'll come around and see if that even looks right. But these are some old examples of patients in the past. But I like it because it's like, let's see. It's always wheat and dairy, so I'll guarantee that. Anytime you have autoimmune, just get rid of wheat and dairy. But look at this, turmeric. This person has a sensitivity. See, it's past that point 2, so it becomes red. So they have a reaction to turmeric, and I would tell them to eat lots of turmeric. Eat lots of radishes, eat lots of cayenne, eat lots of beans. But for this, and Brazil nuts is great for the thyroid. I don't know if you can see that. Cranberries, dates. Allergic to going on dates. That's introvert disease right there. So, ginseng, hazelnut, filbert, right? But if you look at this, it's different from person to person. This is a great one. It doesn't have a whole lot. The person doesn't. But look at this one. This one's crazy. And so we had this patient once, and this is probably close to looking like that patient. But we had a patient once that had an autoimmune condition of eczema. So she had eczema from head to toe. It was all over. It was horrible. It was horrific. And she's 5 years old. And it just broke my heart. And because I had a 5-year-old at the time too. And people treat people very differently when they have eczema. And so I was like, well, we got to do this blood test. And so once we did that, that kid was the worst we've ever had. I think back when we did only 96 foods, she had like half of them she was allergic to. But once she got rid of those, all the autoimmune stuff went away, all the eczema went away. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's thyroid or eczema or Crohn's, it's all the same reaction. So that becomes the quick fix, or the way that we reverse it. Same thing, we had a patient with horrible ulcerative colitis. He said that his gastroenterologist said that's the worst ulcerative colitis he's ever seen. He was on maximum medications, and he was still just having accidents all the time, to the point where he's keeping toilet paper in his car, which apparently a lot of Crohn's and ulcerative colitis patients do. And I told him, we did the test, and he said, what should I eat? And I was like, well, let's just, keep it very simple. Just eat lots of very anti-inflammatory, lots of ginger, lots of turmeric, lots of salmon, and I think lots of spinach is probably what I told him. And he came back. It takes about 2 weeks to get these back. He came back 2 weeks later and he said, this is the worst I've ever been in my life. And he was already the worst. So I was just like, holy crap, I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. I'm a terrible doctor. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. And I was like, oh, wait. We got your lab back. And guess what was on his lab? Every single thing that I said for him to eat that was super healthy, it was on there. And this is where like the autoimmune diet and all those kind of books, they kind of like hit and miss with patients. They'll get slightly better because they usually say get rid of wheat and dairy, which are obvious, but then they go into lectins and saponins and all these other things. Eventually can't eat anything, but they'll get a little bit better, but they may not get all better because they're not doing it specific to that person's antigen molecular mimicry. And that's how you really want to address these things. So the same thing happens when we look at like autoimmune thyroid. We're looking at your thyroid cell, and you have these TPOs, right? Thyroid peroxidase, which helps get iodine into the cells. We have antibodies that then attack that. That's the tissue that ends up getting addressed. So that's TPO antibodies, which I have a patient that has over 2,000. That's pretty crazy. So it's going to be a fun case. And then we have thyroglobulin ones, right? So you have T3 binds to thyroglobulin, and then we have antibodies that attack that. There's a couple others, but these are your two main ones, TPO and TG antibodies. So these are being molecular mimics from other pathogens. So this is still molecular mimicry secondary because of T cell dysregulation. So all we got to do is identify those foods, get rid of those intermediary molecular mimics, and then all of a sudden we stop causing that overhistamine reaction. I hope that makes sense. But here's the crux of it all, though. And this is where a lot of docs kind of fell with this, is basically they will say, well, once you get rid of these, you can just go back to eating them in a couple months. And that's not how it works. You have to outlive that memory cell for that food, and basically think about it like a wanted poster. If I went and robbed Walmart, the first time it'd take them a while to figure out who I was. The second time, third time, fourth time, they're going to have a wanted poster. They're looking for me, right? So if I don't rob that Walmart for a year, they're going to take my wanted poster down. And that's what we do, is if we don't expose ourselves to these molecular mimics, then we get rid of those memory cells, and now we don't have a memory of the molecular mimic. Then we can go back to eating those things. Then our immune system no longer attacks those things, and it starts to look more like that. So the way that you fix this is the short term, stop causing it by getting rid of, identifying and eliminating the intermediary molecular mimics. But then long term, if you don't fix this, why do we have molecular mimics? Why is our immune system suppressed? That's the big problem here. This part is just great, but if you don't change your lifestyle, you will just end up with other stuff a year later. It'll just be different food, and it'll be just as frustrating. Because it'll work for a while, and then it won't. And then you'll be like, it didn't work, the test is wrong, the doctor's stupid, it doesn't work. No, physiology works. But sometimes the way that we approach things is not based on physiology. And so we want to actually address the lifestyle part. So stop eating all the damn sugar, right? Eat real food. That's the simplicity. There is no breakfast food, dinner food, lunch food, just eat food. In the stress part, this is like 2 parts of our report of findings. It used to be 1, it used to be kind of gleamed over, but now it's 2 because, good Lord, we have to understand why we make, basically how we make hormones and how we mess it up, and then how do we stop messing it up? How do we restore normal hormones without taking hormones? Because you don't want to take hormones, whether they're synthetic or bioidentical. Just make your damn hormones and stop exhausting them. Stop being American. Every animal has this figured out. Well, at least non-pet animal has this figured out. And almost every other country has this figured out because it's not rocket science. It is just live a lifestyle that's consistent with life and longevity, and that's it. But we love complexity because complexity will sell you stuff. But simplicity is how you cure. Your cheapest solution to your thyroid problems is a plane ticket and get the hell out of America. America, right? So, we are not only the most stressed country in the entire universe, but by major amount of difference. So you have the next country, next. We are the most stressed by far of the industrialized population. We thrive on that because it sells stuff. If we can make people angry, we can make them fearful, we can make them inadequate, they will buy stuff to try to feel happy and adequate. But no amount of makeup will make you feel adequate. No amount of clothes, no new granite, countertops is going to make you feel adequate. It'll be the next thing. We have to just be happy with being happy. Sounds kind of preachy, but that's all right. Then we have our chemicals. And this is a long talk that we do with patients too, right? Create a lifestyle that's consistent with life and longevity. And that chemical, oh my God, we chemicalize everything. We literally use chemicals to clean our houses that would kill us if we drank them. And the EPA says that if you spray that 1 ounce of chemical cleaner at arm's length away from you in a well-ventilated house, it's in every organ of your body within 28 seconds. Women who work at home and men are more likely to get cancer than those that work out in the cities with all the smog. The EPA says that indoor house quality is now more toxic than smog because every bit of chemical we use in the house stays in the house. So we end up just chemicalizing our environment. We rub petroleum on our skin. We wear petroleum-made products, like have our clothes. It's all made from petroleum. Nylon is made from benzene. Benzene causes cancer. You're wearing and sweating in cancer. Your skin is your largest organ of your entire body, and you are just soaking up those benzene chemicals in that nylon. You should get cancer. You should, but you should also get cancer because you mess up the T cells so they can't correctly identify cancer. So, hope that makes sense. So let's see. Okay, so I'm going to switch this back, and then we're going to go normal. Let's see if we can do this. Howdy, howdy. All right, let's see. All right. Sometimes when I get all excited, I feel like I'm about half step from creating a cult. Let's go live on a commune. Be less stressed. We could call that commune Europe or Denmark or anywhere else in the world. Okay, so I know that seems like a lot of stuff, but I hope it's simple, right? I tell patients all the time, like, there's no just one-line answer from me. It is like I taught anatomy and physiology for 7 years, and I taught a postdoctoral diplomate course and a bunch of continuing education, and so like I'm used to talking for like 8 hours or 12 hours, and you don't get simple answers. You only get, here's how it works, here's how we mess it up, and here's how we restore it. So I want you to understand why. That's the main thing. Because I'll tell you what, I had Graves' disease, which is autoimmune hyperthyroid, and when I was in my 20s, and that endocrinologist, and we talked about this last time, but that endocrinologist, I said, why do I have this? And he goes, it doesn't matter, we're just going to do, so we can do expensive tests, but we're just going to cut it out anyways. When do you want to schedule that? Well, that's bullcrap. You ain't cutting anything out of me unless you can tell me why I have it in the first place. And that's the crazy thing, is a lot of times we're told these things where, oh, we just don't know, and then really, because when I was in graduate school, it was in our book, why we have it. But you will never have doctors talk about IgG. You won't have them talk about delayed sensitivities. You won't have them talk about intermediate molecular mimicries, because there is no medication for that, right? It's in research. Like, this is well-published stuff. And so all I did was say, well, if it works in research, can we safely implement it in clinical practice? Because it typically takes 17 years for that to trickle down into practice, and then it takes decades before it's standard of practice, like washing hands between patients and all these crazy ideas that they came up with. So if it works, just do it. See, make it work, right? So that's why I like the lifestyle stuff too, because it's very empowering for the patient, that they can actually change their life and feel good while they're doing it. So the way that we fix thyroid, autoimmune stuff is not your typical way. It's not the, well, just take these 17 herbs. I mean, sometimes we do stuff, you take a lot of B vitamins, but that'll help make you feel better while you're trying to feel better. But the reality is, we have to stop causing it. All right, feeling like I'm getting a little preachy here. All right, I'm going to try to go back through and see if I can look at some of your guys' questions and a bunch of inappropriate comments. All right, so let's see here. Well, there's a lot. Oh, I don't know what I did there. Did I make it brighter? I think I made it brighter. Okay, so, and you guys got to see me write upside down, which I love. I have a hard time writing regular. Okay, vegan potluck is there. And hi, Dr. Garrett from Ruben. Is that upside down? Yeah. So you know those shirts where they say, if you can read this, then you are one of the few people, whatever, and it's backwards and numbers and it's all messed up. And I'm like, yeah, I can read that fluently. Like, that's okay. All right, so Lynn says she's super late. She's going to watch this from the beginning. There's a test, so I don't want to, like, push anything. Okay, here we go. So Marcia says, can you still get symptoms from foods that you're not allergic to? Well, there is the equivocal range. So at 0.2, that's where it becomes red or positive. And they do this by, I say a little dish, but they put it in a little vial, and basically it's titrated on how dark it is. So even people that don't have a reaction still have a little bit of a reaction. That's why I like Allotest's lab so much, because they actually give this continuum of numbers with it. So it's not just is or isn't, because if it's 0.2, it's positive. But what if it's 0.199? So is that positive or is it not positive? Should I do it? Should I not do it? And so I usually back up people to the equivocal 185 to 199, which those are not reactions, but they could still be reactionary. So the body works off of negative feedback, so it's like this. It's not like this. So we actually had a guy who took a lab test twice, and it got basically the same results, but some things that were just on that side of that number were just on this side, and some things on this side were just on that side, so it really justified that equivocal range. So theoretically, yes. And Marcia, you can also have IgE, you can also have IgM, IgD, IDA, or IgA. It spells gained, which helps you out on the boards, right? G, A, M, E, and D. So, but it's hard to talk to your doctor about this because they only remember IgE, and I've even had patients where the doctor said, well, there's no such thing as IgG or something. Like, that's not, or at least about food, it's like, well, you can do IgG for like Epstein-Barr, but you can for food too, just like you can IgE. All right, so that's a good question. And then Deb Anderson says, I think I might have all the anti-inflammatories on my sensitivities. Yep. Oh man, it's life-changing though. It sucks when people get these, because this is the only time that people cry, is when they get those results back and they're just like, I can't, thanks, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Because we only need a handful of food, so we just gotta like diversify. In fact, I'll tell you my first miracle patient. Like, this is the first one I ever did of these. And it's migraines, which is kind of autoimmune, but more like chronic symptomatology. So it was this little lady that she went to the chiropractor. She had migraines. She kept getting adjusted all the time. And the migraines would keep coming back. And so he said, well, what do you do? I think he used to attend my seminars or something, but he was just like, I went to school with him too. But he said, well, what do I do? And I was like, well, if it's chronic, it's something she's chronically eating, drinking, breathing, rubbing on her skin, but usually it's food. So we could do that test. So she drove all the way from Lyons, Kansas, which was a long way. And we did that test. I explained everything to her. And back then I didn't know crap about crap, but I thought I knew everything. But I said, okay, we should do this test. I was very skeptical. I'm always skeptical of everything because I don't want to do anything gimmicky. I want everything to be rock solid science. And so I said, this is what I think it is, and this is how I think we could test for that and see what happens. So we got our lab test back, right? And it barely had anything on there. I think I say there's only one thing, but there's probably a couple, but it really seemed like there's just like one thing that seemed like any kind of reaction. And it was almond. So when she came in, I felt horrible because I was just like, oh my God, why do I even I wasted this person's money and their time, and she drove all the way from Lyons, Kansas, and like, oh man. And so I was just like, we got the lab test back. The only thing that showed up really is almonds. And I was thinking of ways, how am I going to apologize to this woman for wasting her money and time and trusting me? And she was just like, oh, that makes sense. And I was like, wait, what? And she said, well, she went to the cardiologist and he said, you need to eat more almonds. They're good for your heart. So since then, she was eating a small bag of almonds every day. So, how long have you been doing that? About 6 weeks. How long have you had the migraines? About 6 weeks. I was like, holy crap. I think this is going to work out. So that was my first time ever using this test, and it was like a wonderful miracle. And then we had all these other ones, but for autoimmune thyroid one's a little different. Like, you still got to do this, but those numbers, the autoimmune numbers, they're a little bit more resistant to change, but the patient feels normal. So that's why you always treat patient, don't treat labs, right? So all you want is the patient to feel awesome all the time, regardless of what those autoimmune numbers are, but you still want to see those go down. And they tend to be kind of reflexing to stress. So that goes back to that same thing of like why I really changed that lifestyle medicine protocol to just be really heavy on the how do we make hormones, how do we exhaust the hormones, how do you stop exhausting the hormone situation. All right, so what else do we get? Okay, so Deanna says, so diet foods are bad. Oh, hell yeah, they are bad. What else causes autoimmune and Graves? So why can't they eradicate it? Well, they don't eradicate it because it's very profitable. So nobody has an interest in making you eat healthy food and banning the bad stuff. Much of the food, and I do this talk every now and then, I use it at Natural Grocers, but of foods that are banned everywhere else in the world, but America eats them all the time. And that's the crazy thing, right? You can get 12 years in prison and $500,000 fine for brominating bread. And we've talked about this before. In Singapore, and it's banned in a lot of the other parts of the world because that bromine is a halide that competes with iodine, which is a halide for the thyroglobulin receptors, and then it messes up thyroid. Labs look great, you don't feel great. So if we're socialized medicine and we can't not pay for people that get sick from the food that we allow them to eat, then we go bankrupt. But in America, you go bankrupt for what the government allows you to consume that's banned in other countries, because you then get chronically sick and get a disorder, and there goes your life savings. You live under the bridge and be American, right? If I was going to do that, I'd live under a very nice bridge, and I would build up a really nice rock wall, and I have a little stove and everything. So, and I'd be all snobby, like, look at this cardboard over there. Like, use some bricks. No, I'm just kidding. I'd help him make one. I'd be all excited. Be like, let's make some clay. I'll build a chimney for you. We should make a commune under a bridge. I got some ideas. All right. So yeah, diet foods, the worst. Like, never ever buy anything that's low fat, low sugar, none of that stuff. It's all toxic. There's a great book called The End of Overeating by Dr. Kessler, and it's followed up by another book called Sugar, Salt, Fat, or something like that. And basically it's this. I'll draw it out. But you have three main things that cause brain addiction: sugar, salt, and fat, and then MSG. So, Deanna, it looks like this. So if, that looks backwards. I should write this backwards. Okay. So if, well, that just looks weird. All right, whatever. So if it's low sugar, it's high fat, high salt. If it's low salt, it's high fat, high sugar. And when in doubt, throw MSG in there. And that's the deal. And what Kessler says is this is not some secret thing, Illuminati way of screwing people over. This is just out in the open at food seminars. This is what we say, because if we can get brain addiction, we can get more profitability. If we can make more money off those people getting sick, hallelujah, my stock goes up. Get an extra jet ski, but everybody else gets sick. So the only way that you can eradicate it is really don't buy that stuff, right? Stop eating things that are all chemicalized, but you have to figure out why or where that's coming from. So like books like Twinkie Deconstructed or Food Inc. or In Defense of Food, which is a great one by Michael Pollan. Those things in those documentaries, man, they are really powerful for really changing behavior of what we're buying. Because there's only two things that prevent you from getting healthy, and that's ignorance and complacency. We either don't know what they're doing to us and what they're feeding us, or we don't care. And you can't help people who don't care, like, well, everything causes cancer. Yeah, everything that you put in there that causes cancer is going to cause cancer, but food prevents cancer, so just eat real food, right? So, and then a lot of it, getting rid of the hype stuff, gimmicky stuff, that's the hard part. Even in the very beginning, I had a really hard time figuring out, is this gimmick? Is this real? What's sustainable? So Blue Zones really changed that for me. The 100-Year Lie and Blue Zones are the two best books you can read for how to stop being sick and how to get healthy, or sustainable. So eradicating it is a whole different thing. It's just a whole bunch of knowledge of making choices. Deb Anderson says, I have my own chickens and I can't eat the eggs. You should sell those eggs. There are people that'll buy those eggs. Or tell us where you live and we'll steal those eggs. My pastor friend, Jason, he and his wife have chickens. And so we had to get rid of our chickens. So I thought I would just slip an extra chicken in. Like they have their chickens are all named. They know exactly who they are and all that. But I thought I would just add a chicken like every couple days to their backyard. And so that they couldn't figure out where these chickens are coming from. All right. Okay, so Deb says almonds are in freaking everything. That's right. It's part of the almond agenda by the Illuminati. Okay, you guys. Holy crap, it's been an hour. That's insane. I guess we're done. Post more questions if you have them. I'm glad you guys, I don't know, did you guys like this? Like, you guys got to pretend to be the patient on that side to hear what I have to say. So you get all nerded out, and I hope it was understandable. At least it made sense. I hope. I don't know what people really think on the other side. They're just like, I don't know what the hell this says, right? And I guess the reality is, you don't have to know what I know. Well, not me, but you know what I'm saying. You don't have to know what I know. You just have to trust that I know what I know. And so that's why I try to make sure to explain everything out. So it's just not my philosophy or not my belief, but this is actual physiology. This is research. Even with patients all the time, like, they come in like, well, what caused my grave? I'm like, pfft. Type in molecular mimicry and graves into PubMed. Boom, there's your causes. Which viruses cause it? Boom, we can look at that research. And so that way, it's not based on he says this, I think that's true, and another doctor says I don't think that's true. And well, who do you believe? So that's why it's better just to draw it out and show. I love my physiology chart. That's my favorite thing. I shared with you guys my little baby. All right. Well, a couple closing things. I want to reiterate the vegan night. Go on my Facebook feed there. Also, if you guys need ideas, Amy was kind enough to start what's called Dr. G's Neighborhood. And so if you have where do I get coconut-free shampoo, or almonds are in everything, how do I get something without almonds? That's where you post those things too. because those are all people that have done the test through me or through other people usually, or they're in that same line of like, I want to make these changes, but they're not sure how. I'll throw a shout out to actually I forgot, Mindful Monday. So it's just a 30-minute express mindfulness that's in Delano District, and I think it's in Mind, Wichita, maybe on Facebook. If Connie Praska's watching, you got to post that. And then let's see, Mindful Mondays, and then we have meditation, mindfulness on Saturdays, vegan nights every month. So there's lots of opportunities for you guys to kind of join in. Also, if you like I give Tara a plug. Tara Scott does she's from Newton, so she's a homebody. She does a yoga that's restorative yoga. It's very relaxing. Like, I started doing that with her. But it's over at the Wellness League on Monday nights, 7 to 9:30. That's a really good one for people that can't do it or are kind of nervous about it, because it's dark with one candle. So, like, you don't feel like self-conscious about anything. And I guess if you accidentally farted when you're doing some of the yoga poses, it's dark, nobody would even know who it was. So, and there's incense, it's kind of hazy. I really liked it because there's no self-consciousness in there, you know? I wasn't worried about much of anything. And then there's also, like, Christina Duncan does that flow ICT yoga. That looks scary. I want to try that. We'll do a show. Maybe we'll do that next week. I can go do that and look horrible and fall down, and you guys can laugh at me. They're all going to laugh at you. All right. So, fixing thyroid is mostly fixing cortisol. Fixing cortisol is fixing lifestyle. What we eat, what we think, and the chemicals we use. That's the big things. All right? If you guys have more specific questions, post them. I'll try to answer those. Otherwise, love you guys. Thank you for joining me. So, all right. Bye, you guys.